Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and today I have something really wonderful to share with you. A little while back I mentioned the fact that there is no joy a gardener can have that quite matches the joy of a new greenhouse. And I guess I had been very lucky in my gardening career because I had had two new greenhouses over the course of I don't know how many years. But I have to tell you that this Halloween I had the most wonderful extra bit of good luck, because look behind you and I now have, well, this is my third greenhouse. You might say I'm just being greedy, but what on earth is a plantaholic to do? So in today's video I'm going to show you around my new royal greenhouse, explain why I upgraded to it from the classic, and also just give you some pointers on what can be grown in such a wonderful polycarbonate greenhouse where you can buy one, and also a little tip on what you might want to do to guard against soil erosion, which may be an issue if you've had to excavate the earth to make a flat surface for your greenhouse. Okay, so let's get on with the video. At this stage, I think I'm just going to have to face it. I'm just going to have to own the title of greedy gardener, because that really is what I am. And today we are going to have a look at the fantastic royal greenhouse which is behind me. But just a little recap there, and to tell you how this story began. It started 2.5 years ago when Organicgarden.ie installed the fabulous classic polycarbonate tunnel here in Douentza behind my glass house. I was so delighted, because there are so many more gardening things that I can do, propagation, seed sowing, that just weren't possible in my existing glass house for a variety of reasons. So I was really delighted with the classic, and in all of the videos that you've seen from then until now, you'll have heard me talk about how wonderful it has been to have that space. And you know, I really should have been satisfied. But I then spoke to Michael from Organicgarden.ie, and he mentioned the fantastic royal, which is the one that is here behind me. Now, the thing about the royal is that it's a TARDIS. It's really bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And what do I mean by that? Well, the classic, like many conventional greenhouses, has curved walls, and the result of that is that you actually lose space, because you can't put your shelving, your staging right up against the wall. Well, you can, but then you lose space on top of the shelving to put stuff, because the wall is kind of encroaching the whole time. So it's not really an issue when you've got a big greenhouse, 3x8, which is the size that I had, but it's just a little bit of a shame that I wasn't utilising the full space that was there available to me. And the thing about the royal is that it has flat sides that go straight up, and these are so tall that in fact if I stand with my back against the wall, well, my head doesn't touch the curvature of the ceiling at all. And the ceiling itself in the middle point is a good 30 centimetres taller than that of the classic. So these two factors give a really spacious feel inside of the royal. I mean, just look at how big it feels inside here. There is so much more floor space than there was in the previous classic that I had. And there isn't any fewer plants. There aren't any fewer plants in here than there had been in my previous one. But my goodness, there is just gallons of space up the centre. It really is like a TARDIS, bigger on the inside. So in just a minute, I will give you a proper tour of what I have in here. And my goodness, can you hear my voice echoing? I feel like I have to lay pillows down on the floor to just absorb some of the echo in the sound, which is not something I ever had to do before. And before we get into having a look at what can be grown in here, the journey in getting this greenhouse, I guess, happened on Halloween. And it was a really, really misty Halloween morning when the guys from Organicgarden.ie turned up at an ungodly 7:15 in the morning. It was barely light, and yet there was their van, which had headed off from Galway, I think at about 3 o'clock in the morning. They quickly got to work and started dismantling the greenhouse that I already had here, because, you know, we don't have endless space. It would have been wonderful to have 3 greenhouses in place at the same time, but I think 2 is enough, even for the greediest of gardeners like me. So they were removing the classic and replacing it with this one here, the Royal. And it didn't take them very long to dismantle it completely, which is just, I guess, a kind of motif of life. It takes us so long to actually do things, to create, to display, and only moments to tear all that down. Not that Michael, Dominic and Matthew from Organicgarden.ie tore down my existing greenhouse. They dismantled it, they rolled it up carefully, they took all the metal pieces away and put them back in their van, and then we were left with a big empty space. It was like somebody had played a terrible Halloween trick on me, that they'd snuck in there in the middle of the night and just stolen my precious greenhouse. But if I could be sad about that for a moment, it didn't last for very long, because soon I saw the beginnings of the new Royal going into place, and the guys started putting it up. Now, there were a couple of considerations. I was quite anxious that my grapevine, which you saw me plant a couple of years ago, shouldn't be damaged, and they took very good care not to damage it. That was fine because the wooden base stayed intact and the greenhouse just got put on top of the existing wooden base. They also took extra care not to damage the planting around the greenhouse, which was great since that had newly been put in, and I'll explain to you about that a little bit nearer the end of the video. So soon they were hard at work again, putting up the new greenhouse, and the build was just a little bit different to the one of the classic. The Royal is a really strong greenhouse. It uses twice as much steel as the classic, and that extra strength makes it better able to withstand the pressure of snow if we do have a heavy snowfall at any stage. And my goodness, with the way weather is changing lately, goodness knows what the future will bring. The polycarbonate as well is thicker. It's a 6mm as standard on the Royal. Now, when I say that the polycarbonate is thicker, it doesn't mean that it's thicker in depth. It means that, you know, you've got 2 layers of polycarbonate and they are connected on the inside. And within the space between those 2 layers, there is more polycarbonate on this version, making it the 6mm version. And very importantly, there's a 12-year guarantee on the polycarbonate. The Royal has 2 stable type doors, 1 at each end. My version is 3 meters wide, so it's just a single door. But if you get the 4-meter wide version, then that will give you a double door. Included in the cost are blocks upon which a wooden foundation is placed, a treated wooden foundation. And installation, of course, is included in that price. Now, Organicgarden.ie deliver anywhere within the island of Ireland, so that includes Northern Ireland. But in recent years, because of rising petrol costs, they've had to ask for a delivery fee. Delivery is free within Galway, but anywhere else in Ireland it ranges between 50 and 150 euros. So what can you do with a fabulous greenhouse like this? And the first thing on my mind is those pot displays and lilies that I grow in pots for display in the garden, at the front of the house. Well, if they're kept in pots, they do need to be protected over winter. If you plant them in the ground, they're grand, no problem at all. But just in a protected greenhouse over winter is exactly where those lilies need to be. And as you can see, I have plenty. That collection has expanded with, I guess, the arrival of the classic greenhouse first, and now with this, the royal greenhouse. And also at this time of year, a great thing to be potting up and growing, or starting off in the greenhouse, is tulips and spring bulbs. And over here we have my tulip and spring bulb collection, which I have to admit to you is about to expand, because I have a couple more packets that have yet to be potted up. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I was waiting for the greenhouse to be put up, because you don't want to be potting up big pots, have to lift them outside while the new greenhouse is being installed and then drag them back in again. So anyway, that collection is going to expand. What a wonderful use of this fantastic space. Now, of course, if you have tulips in pots, you can place them in a sheltered position outside. They do like cold, which they get in a nice sheltered, unheated greenhouse like this. But the greenhouse is just so much easier, makes it just so much easier to cope with things like potted tulips and lilies than if you're trying to juggle a whole load of pots in sheltered positions around your garden, which, let's face it, they don't necessarily remain sheltered all through the winter, not with the kind of weather we've been having lately. And of course, there are seedlings. And the greenhouse is an amazing space to get going in spring. So there are so many things we want to try, we want to grow, we want to start from seed. And if you have limited space, if you have perhaps just a kitchen where, you know, you're starting off your seeds on a windowsill, well, if that's all you have, then that's what you must do. But it gets awkward, it's just difficult to manage, not to mention the fact that you are then growing seedlings in too warm an environment, and they tend to, you know, they suffer from fungal diseases and they'll tend to wilt off and be gone. So a greenhouse is your only man really for getting going in spring. Now, it's not spring now, but I have things that I am overwintering. So I have some perennial seedlings that I'm overwintering, like my Echinopsis seeds. Remember these guys that I grew a while back, doing really well. Again, you know, if you didn't have a greenhouse, maybe you could put them outside in a sheltered position. Who has that many sheltered positions? So I've got Echinopsis on the go. I have biennials, so I've still got some Sweet Williams I haven't yet planted out. But you know what? I think I'm going to do a big pot of Sweet Williams as part of my spring pot display. I think that would be really, really nice. You may have more specialist things that you are growing. So I don't know, I even have still a few Echium wilpretii knocking around in here. I've started off a few lupins in this tray here, and I don't know, various bits and bobs that you wouldn't be bitsing and bobbing if you didn't have a greenhouse. A greenhouse is of course wonderful for overwintering things, and if you grow dahlias and you can't leave them in the ground, if you grow calla lilies, if you grow begonias, then you're going to have to be digging those up, drying them off and storing them frost free. they do wonderfully here on these shelves here. I haven't yet moved them back in here. I moved them into the glass house while the greenhouse is being erected, and I haven't taken everything finally back in here. But those big boxes of dahlias, they are going to fit on here on the shelving. With the classic, the shelving had to go out like this because the big boxes would have been hitting their heads on the roof. But no, the royal. And of course, a greenhouse like this is amazing for potting. Look at the luxury of a great big round table, which I have here with a chair where I can come out and comfortably pot up those extra tulip bulbs that I bought and want to get going in pots. No having to squat on the lawn somewhere. Have you ever squatted on the lawn to repot your seedlings? We've all done it. Well, none of that when you have a wonderful space like the royal greenhouse to do your potting up in. So yeah, that is a real luxury that I appreciate so much. And of course, my potting composts and pots, clay pots, will go into this shelving in just a little while. I haven't yet moved them out from their temporary position while the greenhouse was being installed. And you know what? This greenhouse is so big. It's so wide. There's so much floor space. You could actually even have a party in here. You could even do your Irish dancing. Okay, I'm getting a bit flippant now, but you get the idea. I'm really happy about the extra space I have in this TARDIS-like royal greenhouse. I really hope I've communicated to you properly about the benefits of a greenhouse. I just think it is just such an amazing thing. And if you're on the fence about it, or if perhaps you're thinking of getting one for yourself, then this is really a great moment to do it. Organicgarden.ie would have fewer orders during the autumn and during the winter, so they're better able to fulfill any orders that they get straight away. And if you order and get a greenhouse now, well, you know what that means. It means that you can be sowing seeds in February and March in your very own greenhouse space. And if you do decide to order a greenhouse from Organicgarden.ie, then I will put their link down below in the video description below, the link to their website, and also a code that you can use to get €100 off your greenhouse order. The code is Douentza, and if you use it, then you can get your greenhouse hopefully very soon. You could be sowing seeds in February and March, and you can be paying €100 less for the privilege. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you in this video is the planting that I've done around the greenhouse. And for this planting, I've used a fantastic Cotoneaster or Cotoneaster, whichever way you pronounce it, Dameri Coral Bells. And this is a fantastic evergreen shrub with an arching habit that has small glossy leaves. It produces white flowers, small white flowers, and then later it produces red berries. And it is a wonderful plant because it is very good at stabilizing banks. Now you can see that my greenhouse, the area for my greenhouse was excavated from a slopey area, and the result of that is that I have banks of earth on either side. In the winter, the rain and the wind will tend to make that earth fall down onto the plastic membrane I have below. So it's a job then every couple of months to just kind of sweep that up and scrape it back and make sure that kind of the area isn't being buried. So my solution to this is the Cotoneaster, and I know this Cotoneaster Dameri because I've used it before in my garden. I have it here on this little cliff edge area where it does a fantastic job of just covering up an awkward, ugly spot, stopping soil from eroding, and just looking neat and tidy. A couple of times a year I take a secateurs and cut it in a straight line where it meets the tarmac, because I don't want it kind of scrambling too far across the tarmac. So I know what this plant can do, and with that in mind I chose this plant to plant all around the edges of my greenhouse, the cliff edges of my greenhouse. In time this plant will cascade down the bare earth that you see and stick to it, because it's a plant that roots as it goes, and very soon you won't see the soil and the soil won't be loose, and I won't have this problem. I will just have a beautiful green, glossy green backdrop to all of the videos that I make in my new royal greenhouse. So if you're looking for a solution to a similar problem, then I highly recommend this particular plant, and I also highly recommend getting it from the company in Aughrim called Vandervelde, who I have known for many years. I think most of my hedging has come from Vandervelde, Cappagh Nurseries in Aughrim in Wicklow, and they produce a bare root plant list in November each year, so you can order plants cheaply. It's a great way to get hedging going in your garden, and just of course, when you buy something bare root, it establishes more quickly, it grows stronger, and it gets going quicker, not to mention the fact that it's a lot cheaper than buying something in a pot. Okay, so I'm back in the greenhouse again. I just can't stay out of it, and kind of nearing the end of this video. Now I'm going to finish off at the end by showing you some clips of the guys, of Michael and Dominic and Matthew, as they installed my fabulous new royal greenhouse. I will remind you that you too can have a greenhouse from Organicgarden.ie if you're in Ireland, in the island of Ireland. Their website is down below in the description. Please do go and check them out, and with the code Douentza you can get €100 off your purchase. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye!